All right. Okay, here we go. Bang on. We're waiting for Ani. All right. So, in case you missed it, which you probably did, welcome to the show. I did the invocation already, so that's good. We're good to go on that part. And yeah, we now have 0 people watching us, which I know isn't true, but it's good. Here we go. Yes, thank you. Thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. Okay, so again, I wanted to just tell you, let you know that I'll be doing a relocation webinar on Saturday. If you are just now hitting the live stream, so I'll be doing a relocation webinar this Saturday at 12 noon Central Standard Time on Zoom. If you are a subscriber and have been supporting the channel on a monthly basis, then you are welcome to go, right? That's part of the deal. You're welcome to go. You're welcome to be there. It's part of the deal. Doesn't matter if you're a Mars subscriber or a Jove subscriber, whatever level you run on, you can attend. Okay, and the link for the webinar is in the description for the show here on YouTube. And as I was saying, one of the things that as an astrologer, that one of my specialties is relocation, and there's a lot to relocation. It's more than just looking at an astrocartography program and trying to figure out where your good lines are. It's about relocating the chart. It's about understanding the chart of the state or the city you're living in, doing synastry with it, understanding the difference between the natal chart and the relocated chart and how they work together. And a lot of people don't understand how they work together. And people will say, well, which one do I follow? Which one to follow? Do I follow the natal chart or the relocated chart? I'll tell you how that works, right? I'll get into detail about how that works and how they mesh together. And I'm going to get into timing, like when a good time to move is, when a maybe challenging time to move is, whether it's even your time to move or whether you need to go. Like I have a client who was asking me about relocation, and I looked at the map, and even though she lives in California, believe it or not, it's actually a good place for her, and it's been easy for her. So sometimes, even in spite of conditions, social conditions, political conditions, economic conditions, sometimes where you are is the best place to be, believe it or not. So we could go over that as well. We'll cover it all. We'll totally cover it all. And as I was talking with the people in the chat room, I don't know if they heard me or not, but the first time that I really experienced astrocartography intensely was when I was 24, and I ran smack into my Pluto line right on my midheaven in the city of London. And it left a lasting impression on me, even though I knew nothing about relocated astrology. And it would be 5 years later when I would have my first astrocartography reading with Jim Lewis, who was the creator of astrocartography in Seattle. And that's when I got first turned on to it. So I've been playing with this stuff since roughly 1989, 1990, and have helped a lot of people understand kind of where to go and how to get there, timing wise, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And the tricky thing about astrocartography is actually finding a place where you and another person can be theoretically happy together, because you're obviously, most people, not everybody, but most people will move together in a couple form or family form. And, it's not always easy. For some people, one place might be better than another. Sometimes life can be a series of compromises, especially in relationship. But I've worked with people where, certain areas have been just, bang on for both people. And if that's the case, then, that's solvable. Anyway, it's a 3-hour webinar. We'll have 90 minutes, and we'll meet for 90 minutes, and we'll go over everything you need to know about astrocartography, relocation. I'll show you where to find charts for cities and states, and you can plug them in and then use them with synastry with your chart, and it'll be a good thing. It'll be a good thing. All right, let's get rolling here. Why don't we check out the chart of the moment, and let's see where we are. It's kind of astro wise. Let me get in here, make a few tweaks, and let's do this. I'll just set the I'll set the astro clock. So now we're going to be talking about Kyle Rittenhouse, who is the young man now known as the Kenosha Kid, which is quite odd in a lot of ways, and I'll get into why it's odd. So let me do this. Let's get this set up, and I'm going to look at his chart. And I'm going to look at some of the specifics for Tuesday night, early Wednesday morning, when this whole thing went down. I don't have his birth time, but I do have his birth date and where he was born. So I kind of took a stab at this. This is just kind of, throwing some spaghetti at the wall with a rectification. So I rectified his chart a little bit, and we're going to look at the aspects for, where are we here? For him specifically, and what was going on that night, and what's going on with their generation. When I say them, I'm talking about the Zoomer kids, the Pluto and Sagittarius kids, because they're in a bit of a crisis right now. So I'm going to talk about that, and then there's another person who shares a birthday with Kyle Rittenhouse, and you're going to be very surprised, super surprised when you see it. But you may not be surprised, knowing what we know about astrology. So we're going to get into that tonight. Mostly the Rittenhouse charts and the generational stuff and the chart of the moment. So we'll get into that. And that's probably going to be the menu for tonight. I'm probably going to try to go for, let's see, it's 8:30. Let's see if we can get it up to maybe about 10 or a little bit before 10. I don't want to keep people up too late. I know a lot of people just kind of bail out if it gets too late, and I want to keep you around. I don't want this to be too terribly long. By the way, the event is moving. It's happening. Everybody who went last year, they got an email. They got a link to sign up, and a link to get a hotel room. And everybody who's a member of the 11th house, who's been subscribing on your newsletter, the link is in there. And then you got the amount to sign up. And everybody who went last year or who is a member of the 11th house, you're getting a $100 discount. And so the sort of the public cost, or the public fee, which is only $100 more, that goes live tonight. That'll be on Facebook, on both my page and the 11th house page, and it'll be on my website. Okay, so it is happening, and I got so many great things going on with this event. You guys have probably seen Lee Guest, who has been on my show once before. So it was right after the COVID lockdown. I had Lee Guest on my show. She's terrific. She's this sassy singer-songwriter who lives for the most part in the Florida Keys, and she's a daughter of one of my clients. So I'm not going to tell her name, but she's the daughter of one of my clients, and that's how I met Lee, was through her mom. And I first met Lee in Austin when she was doing a gig in Austin, and I was kind of blown away. And I'm not easily blown away with singer-songwriters. I think singer-songwriter is kind of a lame. It's kind of a lame genre. I mean, if you're really good, I dig it. But there are a lot of kind of really mediocre singer-songwriters. Like if you know how to play guitar and you can carry a tune, and you can, sing kind of a, reasonable standard, or make up your own tune, you're doing better than I am, because I can't do that. I might be able to write a song, but I can't sing, and I can't play guitar. So you're already doing better than I am. However, that said, there are people who are just kind of a cut above. You know, whether it's their intonation, whether they can really do some really interesting things on the fretboard, whether it's charisma, whether they write a really good song. There are certain things that set certain people apart. Lee is a really good songwriter. She's funny, she's witty. Anyway, she did a tune in Sturgis called Fuck Your Feelings. And this thing has gone like just massively viral. I think it's already had over 1 million views. So she's in the studio right now and she's cutting it, and she's cutting a video for Fuck Your Feelings. And I'm telling you, this song is going to be huge. Well, guess what? Lee's going to be performing at the event. Yep. When we have the Hill Country Hoedown, Lee Guest is going to be out there, a picking and a strumming, and she'll be playing her hit tune, Fuck Your Feelings. So you don't want to miss that. You do not want to miss that. I'm telling you right now, you want to be there for that alone. Okay? That alone. And well, guess what else we have? We have Misaki, also known as Akaida. That's his DJ name. He's playing on Saturday night. And I'm going to try to get a pretty cool theme going on for that night with the ambiance. I have an idea in mind. So Akaida, also known as Misaki, we got panels that day, that Saturday. It's going to be great. It's a lot going on. So anyway, the link will be up on Facebook tonight. I just needed to get it out to some other people first. And by the way, flights are still cheap. They're so cheap. You can still get out here, and it'll be affordable. It'll be affordable. And I brought the price of the webinar down so as many people can go as possible, right? I got a great outing planned for us on Friday night. Cannot tell you about it. It's top secret, but you're going to love it. I'll tell you that right now. And of course, we're going to have great food and great company. And guess what? You get to hang out with like-minded people. That's right. You get to hang out with people that, guess what? Get it, right? That in and of itself will be worth the price of admission alone. The Crimmies are going to be there. Steve will be selling some books. He'll have a little stand. You know, if you're going and you have, you know, something you want to sell, you want to bring to the table. Let's say you got crystals you want to sell. Whatever. If you're coming, you attend, you got a table, or if you want to sell something, I'll get you a table. You can set up and you make a little bit of money on the side. I'm not even going to take anything. Okay, some people will take something. I won't take anything. So just let that kind of like, you know, swim around in your head a little bit. All right. So it's about connecting. It's about community. It's about possibility. It's about potential. And it's about talking about what we can do moving forward, how we coalesce energy, how we build community, online, offline. Where's this thing going astrologically? All right, I'll be talking about that. So the links will be up on Facebook tonight, my page, the 11th house page, and I'm going to try to find a spot for it on my website. Everybody else who needed to get that link, who needed to get in and get first crack at the hotel rooms, and who, you know, got that discount, you got that email. All right, let's get cracking. Let's do this. And you know, if you can't make it, we'll stream some of this stuff so that you guys will be able to participate in some of it. We'll have some show material. We'll broadcast live for the Friday Farcast, and we'll be doing a Matrix Mash as well. That'll be cool. That'll be happening with Emily. Let's see where we got there. Okay, let's do this. Here it is. That's your chart of the moment right there. We're looking at a nice grand trine. Let's see who's in the mix here. Uranus, Jupiter, and the Sun. So we've got Uranus at 10, Sun at 8, Jupiter retrograde. That's been an interesting transit, this Jupiter retrograde. I've been thinking about this Jupiter retrograde for the past few days, and it's been interesting for me to deal with. I mean, because obviously I'm kind of, you know, supposedly I'm running a business. Okay. When I started this off, like astrology chose me. It chose me. And you might know the story, but if you don't, here's how it goes. When I was how was it? I was 48. So this is 2008. And by the way, I knew astrology. It wasn't like I was just like, oh, gee, well, let me like figure out how to be an astrologer. No, I knew astrology. That was always kind of in my back pocket. But primarily in terms of this work, I was mostly a tarot reader. Like the 90s for me were my tarot reading period. And I did really well during that time. And it was such a different time. It was all pre-computer. I was word of mouth. People would pay me. I do readings for them, and they would just send me checks. They'd say how much. I'd say, well, it's this much, and I'd get checks in the mail. And I think only one time I got stiffed. That was it. Right. So, and I would use astrology when I would talk with people about the tarot, because number one, I use the Thoth deck, and the Thoth deck has astrological symbols. But I'd also do, variants of astrological readings. I would assemble the cards in a wheel, and I would read the cards like, in square conjunctions, things like that, which you could do, by the way. So that was all part of my background. And then in 2008, I did a blog post on Sarah Palin and her chart. And I had a blog, and I was just kind of messing around with it a little bit. So I had this blog, and then this post popped, and I went to go look at my stats, and they were like through the roof. Like, holy shit! Look what happened here. I should really probably do more of this astrology stuff, because this is getting some traction. And so I continued to do more and more and more, and then I got really turned on, really switched on, and that's when Saturn was getting ready to hit my midheaven. So astrology chose me, and I wouldn't necessarily say that I'm a business person per se. Because if I was a business person, my practice and my methodology would look probably a whole lot different. All right. I came at this from a couple different places and perspectives, as an art form, as a form of personal expression, and a way to somehow employ what I would consider kind of revelatory, or I'll use the word kind of prophetic chops that I tended to have and still tend to have. And this was a way for me to kind of bring those out into the world. And then the other piece was to help people. So this is where it all sort of came together. And this Jupiter retrograde has really given me this insight into the professional aspects of what I'm doing. And so I've amped up. I've got a new website, and I'm still working with that and figuring that out. I didn't build that website. So there are quirks, and I'm still trying to figure out with that thing. But this has been interesting because Jupiter's been kind of moving away from this trine with my sun. And of course, it's in Capricorn, which is all about, being professional and, kind of being business oriented, being serious. So this has been an interesting time to kind of see where I could be more, quote unquote, professional in some ways. Because there's another part of my game that's really, really solid, like super solid. But it's this other piece that I'm working on and playing catch up with, and I've been playing catch up with it and I'm kind of okay with that, right? In some ways, I'm kind of okay with it, but not as much as I was, say, about a year ago, and or 2 years ago, and yeah. So I feel like I've been kind of this interesting independent singer songwriter, the indie guy, but now I'm trying to break something on a major label. All right, so I think that's the theme. But this Jupiter retrograde has really shown me where I can get better. And I think we all have that opportunity with this Jupiter retrograde in Capricorn. For me, I'm a Virgo sun. It started to go retrograde right at about 28 degrees. It was like 20, 27, 28 degrees. So it was within a really tight trine with my sun. And so as it's gone retrograde, what did I do? I got the new website, and I was like, okay, well, what do I need to be doing better here? Right? How do I get my Capricorn game on? And there's something there for everybody. I mean, look at this. We've got Saturn, we've got Pluto, we've got Jupiter. They're all retrograde. And in a lot of ways, this is, if we want to blow this up and make it even bigger, like this really brings into focus how like, how do we deal with the powers that be? Not just how do I get better or how do I become more professional? You know, how do I take my game, your game, our game to another level, which I think ultimately that's really the big, that is the big piece, right? That is the big burrito right there. That is the super burrito. But in order to do that, I think we've had to kind of get a sense as to what's going on with these Capricornian and hierarchical structures. We've seen it. We've seen people like Fauci. We've seen people like Gates. We've seen these players, right? And they're players. They're in many ways they're just like shadow puppets. I mean, when you really drill down, you watch that pandemic. You gotta, apologize to Mickey for whatever happened on Friday, because all of a sudden they grabbed a hold of this stream and it just went down. And that was 2 times last week. Plus, I had the. Oh, by the way, I lost my appeal. I lost my appeal to YouTube, so now I have a strike because they didn't give a shit. They didn't give a shit whether I was, unequivocally stating that I wasn't a news service. Anyway, what we saw in Mickey's video is just what, like, Bill Gates is nothing more than a cutout. He's a cutout. That's what he is. He's a cutout. He didn't invent Microsoft. He started Microsoft, but he didn't invent Windows. He basically bought Windows from some guy. Okay. And at that time, the computer community was all about sharing information. It was like about as close to open source as you can get. I mean, it was a really, that was the vibe. It's like open source, open source, open source, open. And Bill Gates was one of these guys that was promoting this, hey, it's all good, me and Paul Allen and Steve Jobs, we're just cruising around. We're just open source bros. And as soon as he got the proprietary code for Windows, guess what he did? He shut down the open source world. He got really aggressive, really super aggressive. But he didn't build Windows. And Paul Allen was obviously the brains behind the whole thing. And Paul Allen was older than Bill Gates. He was older. And then when you watch Mickey's video, Paul Allen goes on to say that when he was suffering from cancer, Bill Gates wanted to delist his shares. What a fucker. Like, he wanted to delist his shares. He was taking advantage of the guy who helped him build Microsoft. He was in a weakened state, and like, theoretically, while he wasn't looking, he's going to basically delist his shares and take them from Paul Allen. This is the guy that we're dealing with here. And he did not build Windows. He appropriated Windows. That's it. That's it. And he had people around him like Steve Ballmer and Paul Allen who built Microsoft. They built Microsoft. Bill Gates is an opportunist. And I'm not saying he's a complete moron. I think you've got to have some native intelligence to be an opportunist. But it's not like he was a code warrior. And it's not like he built Microsoft by himself. And one of the most embarrassing spectacles you could witness of a human is to watch Bill Gates being interrogated by the Department of Justice. You go watch that. You watch that. Holy shit. He is just, it's embarrassing. It's embarrassing. What he does and how he tries to weasel out of the language. Anyway, we've seen it. We've seen it. We know what this guy's about. Fauci, we've seen him. We know what he's about. This is what's happened with all these planets going retrograde. It's like we're witnessing this kind of migration of iconographic power. Right? We've witnessed this migration, but it's going backwards. And we're reevaluating who these people are. We're reevaluating their power. But now the big question is, well, what do we do? Well, what do we do? It's all out there now. Well, I'll tell you, in Germany, what did they have? They had the second, I think it was the largest rally in Germany since World War II, maybe even during World War II. And why were they there? They were there rallying because they don't want the lockdown. So the rulers of Western Europe, who are really just errand boys, these people that are running the EU, the various kinds of principalities or states of the EU, they're nothing but well, I'm not even sure if they're okay. I've been getting into trouble with my classification of certain genders lately. Okay, so I'm going to leave that one alone. But they are, that's all they are. They're just there to move the levers for the people that are 1, 2, 3 levels above them. That's all they are. That's all. And people are they're finally waking up. They're finally seeing this. And this is all part of this retrograde. But now the big question is, well, what do we do? What do we do? How do we deal with them? And it's not just them, because they're theoretically, somewhere 3/4 of the way up the pyramid. What about the people that are just 1 or 2 or maybe 3 levels above you on the pyramid? How do you deal with them? And these are the people that live around you. These are the people that your mayors, your city councilmen, your older people, your supervisors. What about the hospitals? What about the person that's running the hospital in your town? What about the county commissioner? How do you deal with these people? Because these people are the ones that are carrying out policy on a local level. And if you haven't thought about it, you better think about it. You better pay some attention to it, because those are the people that are going to be the most accessible. And I said this with Heather on the show on Friday that she hasn't put up yet, but you'll see it. I guarantee you, somebody who is a local politician is going to have a bad day. They're going to have a bad day. And I don't know what that bad day is going to look like. It could be anything from getting a pie in the face to something even more extreme than that. I'm telling you, it's going to happen. And with Mars right here getting closer and closer and closer to that station point, which is going to be right around 9/9. I think Mars will go station at 9/9. It goes retrograde on 9/10. That's going to be an intense time. It's going to be a very intense time. Now, usually what happens is that they will know that there are moments of pressure release, and that they have to have this pressure release. And that's why they'll back off. Well, guess what? Now we're not going to have the sanctions as much. We're not going to be as hardcore in the sanctions. Well, guess what? Well, I guess what we'll do is maybe we'll let the bars open for I don't know, until 8 o'clock at night, right? They'll do some shit like that. Although I saw yesterday on a news broadcast from San Antonio that they're going to close all the parks on Memorial Day weekend in San Antonio. Like, where are people going to go? Where are people going to go? And you think that that's going to help their cause? I tell you, it won't. And let's see what the PD or the sheriff's department in San Antonio does when people ignore their public officials and wind up going down to their parks. I think Memorial Day could get hot. I think it's one of those days that could get hot. Mars won't be stationed yet, but it's getting close. It's getting very, very close. And it's already past Saturn, right? It's already moved past Saturn. It's separated from Saturn. So Mars is kind of out in front now. And I think that that's important, because now it's no longer kind of under the constraint or the restraint of that tight square. And it's important. Is it good? That's another topic of conversation. Is it good? Well, I guess it was last night that we had a supposed, and again, I say supposed because, reality is weird and it doesn't always line up, and it's not always projected the way that it's purported. So we supposedly had somebody who was a Trump supporter last night in Portland who got shot in the chest. And apparently the video was, I'll play it tomorrow on the show tomorrow. Apparently the video is, we got a Trump supporter. Okay. Now, what do you think is going to happen there? Well, now that Mars has separated and moved past Saturn, Saturn is law, right? Saturn is the enforcement of law. And what we've seen during this whole time is we've seen the retrograde. We have not seen law being enforced. It's like, okay, well, our politicians are retreating. No comment. We're not going to comment on that. You know, whether it's on the Democratic side, where it's like, well, what about Antifa? Have you seen Antifa? Will you denounce it? I don't know who they are. I've never seen it. Oh, I've heard. No, I don't think that they're violent. See, there's your Jerry Nadler or Nadler, however you say his name. That's his version of the retreat. And then the right's version of the retreat is like what Rand Paul did the other night. You know, that was like a retreat. He had to retreat back to his hotel room as fast as he fucking could because there was a mob of people that were around him, and he had about 3 or 4 cops, barely enough to get him to his hotel room. But even the Republicans, so-called law and order party, they've retreated really from any kind of commentary at all. Any kind of commentary. You know, here in Texas, we've had some incidents in Austin, but Greg Abbott hasn't said shit. He hasn't said shit. He has said that if they defund the police, then what he will do is he will essentially put a freeze on property taxes. You won't be able to raise the private. Well, gee, that's all well and good. That's great, Greg. But we've seen these people in retreat now. They've retreated away from the issue. They've retreated away from the problem. And as they've retreated away, Mars has moved forward and has moved forward steadily, steadily, steadily. And now, guess what? Now it's separated from Saturn. And you keep your eye on Portland. Last week, I talked about how we were going to go next level, next phase. And guess what? It happened 24 hours later. In fact, it happened even before the show. I didn't know that. I didn't know that Jacob Blake had been, you know, shot, whatever happened to Jacob Blake. I didn't know that. I did not know that. So we saw that, and it went next level. Boom, there it went, Kenosha. You know, not a huge town. Wasn't Manhattan, wasn't Chicago, wasn't LA, wasn't Seattle, wasn't Portland. Kenosha, maybe 100,000 people. And then it went super next level with Kyle Rittenhouse. So I think you need to keep your eye on Portland, because now that somebody who is a supposed Trump supporter has been killed, there's going to be hell to pay. There is going to be hell to pay. You know, I was talking with a friend tonight or earlier today, and we've come to that moment in They Live, right, where Roddy Piper says, "I've come here to chew bubblegum and kick ass, and I'm all out of bubblegum." We've come to that moment. And the Kyle Rittenhouse event, and I'm going to call it an event because there's some very interesting quirks with the Kyle Rittenhouse event, which I'm going to get into tonight, that we need to look at. Now, there are some people who think that it's another false flag. Okay? Would I have a problem with that? No, but then you'd have to really drill down and get into Kyle Rittenhouse. Was he manipulated? Was he a Manchurian candidate? Was it all set up for him to be kind of a patsy? Well, I'll try to get into some of that tonight. All right, but now we've got the situation in Portland. Now we've had somebody who is a Trump supporter who was shot in the chest. If history repeats and patterns are cyclical, and they are, that I can guarantee you right now that Mars separating from Saturn is important, but it will not necessarily be good. It won't necessarily be good. What we're going to see now is we're going to see the ramping up and the marshaling of forces against Antifa and Black Lives Matter. It's going to happen. It's already happened. They crossed the Maginot Line in Kenosha this last week. Whether that event is real or staged or a combination thereof, they crossed the Maginot Line. And again, last night in Portland, somebody was killed. And I don't think people who, and this won't be Proud Boys now. This won't be the Proud Boys. These will be people who live outside of the Portland area. You're probably going to get people from Eastern Oregon, Southern Oregon. You'll probably get people from that area. You might pull some people from Eastern Washington. Now, the problem with events like that, the problem when you have militia-oriented people getting in the fray, is that you don't know who they are. They could be militia people. They could be people who have been inserted into militias. And this happens all the time. The FBI has been great at this for years, whether it's Tim McVeigh or, you know, Mr. You know, airplane shoe bomber guy. They find ways to infiltrate. They find ways to agitate. I mean, they did this going all the way back to the 1960s with the Black Panther movement. They did it with the Weather Underground. So what would keep them from doing the same with current day militias? Nothing, absolutely nothing. So we have to be very, very observant. We have to be observant around what happens and what takes place. And if you're one of those people that plan on doing that, you better be observant too. I'm just saying, you don't know who's hanging out with you. You don't know what they're proposing. And you certainly don't know who's going to show up and all of a sudden be a member of your posse. And then the next thing you know, you've got a rogue element inside of your posse, and they're doing shit that you don't want to be associated with. Okay, so we're in very, very tricky times, right? Here's your true node in Gemini. It's exactly what we're beginning to dive into here. Like, who is who, what is what? Can you trust the person who's on your side, not on your side? So it's spy versus spy. That's where we are now. Spy versus spy. And the first shots have been fired. And those first shots weren't the Kenosha kid. There were other shots that have been fired. Plenty of shots have been fired. There are people that have been killed. There are people that have been severely beaten and wounded that have not gone unnoticed. There are people that are keeping score at home. And when they get involved, right, it could get very ugly. Very, very ugly. And not just because there are supposed agents provocateurs involved. When we talk about Mars, what are we talking about? We're talking about military, okay? We're talking about military. And these are people who have been in wars. Afghanistan, Iraq, Syria, Somalia, and maybe some clandestine efforts in other parts of the world that we wouldn't really think about. They're there, and they know how to do things. They know how to do shit. They can snipe, they can organize, they can communicate, they can set tripwires. Now, these are the people that we're talking about. So if they get involved, and they could easily get involved, then Antifa or the BLM people who've been essentially, kind of running these operations, they're going to be dealing with next level people, and they won't see them on the streets. They'll probably be nestled somewhere 3-4 stories up. They'll be cloaked, they'll be hidden, and I guarantee you, even the cops probably won't see them. Although the cops, a lot of them are ex-military, they might get it. They might have a handle on them. So this is what we're talking about now. And if you're a parent and you got a kid that's playing around and sort of doing this live action role play known as protesting or being a member of Antifa, you should probably have a pretty serious conversation with your kid. Pretty serious conversation with your kid, because this could get very hot very, very quickly. And the summer of love will turn into summertime blues, and it will not end well. It won't end well. And of course, the agent provocateurism is also very much in play here. So this is Mars now. This is the big Mars story. Mars moving out and separating out from Saturn. Mars kind of going rogue in this T-square. And when it goes retrograde, I would think that probably at some point during the retrograde, that what will happen is that the powers that be, or the quote-unquote forces of law and order, will assert themselves, and they'll try to rein this thing back in at that point. And you could already see that the Democrats are getting frightened. They're getting very frightened, because the riots just keep going and going and going and going and going. And as they continue to go, what happens to Trump? Trump continues to rise in the polls. Does that surprise them? You'd think that these people would be smart enough to understand the political ramifications. And again, if you're on the right or you're in the Republican zone, you're probably feeding the trolls there, because you want that to continue to happen. You want to erode Joe Biden's base as much as possible. So there is an investment in allowing these riots to continue. Let's be honest. And yes, I'm being slightly cynical, but it's true. We're witnessing what's happening. We're witnessing sort of two candidates going in different directions. And the closer this thing continues to get to November, I would say that the gap is going to widen, widen, widen. until Trump ultimately has a pretty substantial lead. And as it stands right now, I think Trump will probably win at the very least with a 10% margin of the vote. 10% at least. I think it could be greater. I think Trump could win by 20 to 25% of the vote. If it's 20 to 25% of the vote, I think that the Democrats will cry wolf, right? They will cry wolf. If it's because I know some people who say that if he wins in a landslide, there's no way they can contest it. Well, that's kind of a worst case scenario in some ways, because then they'll go after the landslide. Well, the polls were so close. The polls were so close. This is bullshit. This is, they stole the election. I think he'll win by a landslide, but he can't win by a landslide. He can't. If some semblance of order, but I mean some, he's got to win by at least 10%. Because if it's 5% or less, then you're into that zone where the vote can be questioned again. If it's 10%, it's kind of in this odd comfort zone where it's large enough to win and maybe too big to contest. I think the Democrats will have a very tough time when it's like extreme on one end or extremely close on the other. That 10% margin is in that comfort zone where it becomes, I think, very difficult. It's still not going to be easy, and for a long time I've been saying that we're not, that there's a good chance we would have an election. We have some runway between now and the first Tuesday of November, and then even after the election. And the strategy has been to contest the election to the point where they run the clock out. January 2nd rolls around. Is it January 2nd? January 2nd rolls around. Trump and Pence have to leave. And then guess what? Nancy Pelosi is now the president of the United States. Like, that scenario is kind of in the works. And a lot of this is going to be happening with this Mars retrograde, which happens on the 10th of September. So what would be, in some ways, the hand to play? If you're Trump and you're his administration, and you know that there's a fifth column group that's doing everything in their power to remove you from office, what would you do? Would you allow the elections to happen? Would you allow them to take place and have Trump win and then take his chances at dealing with the count, dealing with the masses, dealing with the media? Would you do that? Or would you be preemptive? There's already signs that he's being preemptive, because what's happened now is that he has limited the powers of electional oversight. He has limited those powers. They're already taking place, and the left now is probably starting to squirm. What does that mean? It means that he's limiting the powers of the government to go in and examine the results of an election. Think about that now. Well, why is that? Because if that is limited, that means that they won't have either enough people or enough resources in order to take on an avalanche of either lawsuits or conjecture, right? It's not going to happen. So they're already taking preemptive actions to limit the damage that can be done. Okay? That's happening. And when you see the Mars retrograde, I think you're going to see more of this. You're going to see more of it. Now, the NBA is going to turn arenas into voting stations. The NBA, again, don't get me started on the NBA, but they're going to try to turn arenas into voting stations. They're going to try and pack as many people in those arenas to vote, right? So the NBA is essentially turning itself into, I don't know, voting central. Slam dunk that vote. That's going to be interesting. Let's see what happens. We'll see how that goes down. The other thing that's quite interesting is that the post office just recently filed a patent on blockchain technology for, guess what, voting. Will the post office bust out a blockchain system before now and the election on the first Tuesday of November? Keep your eyes on that. Here's your Uranus right here in Taurus, right? Uranus in Taurus, radically reorienting our relationship to physical reality, reorient our relationship with assets, hard money. Right? This is Uranus. And when you cast a ballot, there's a lot of ways you cast a ballot. You could have a little card that you use your number 2 pencil, do that. You can hit the Chad. There's electronic voting, right? But what they don't have is they don't have a blockchain system. They don't have a blockchain system. So keep your eyes on that. I think that's an interesting development. And would they be able to break it out and bust it out in place within roughly 2 months? Well, I guess we're going to find out, won't we? Because if they have a blockchain voting system, then really, theoretically, nobody can hack it and the votes cannot be contested. So keep your eyes on that. That could be an ace that Trump has up his sleeve. Also, the post office, I believe, is going to be radically reformed. I think the post office in the not so distant future is going to replace the banks. That's what I think. I think the post office will be involved in currency. Because again, what are we dealing with? We're dealing with Uranus in Taurus and everything that's been kind of physical, right? Money, even mail. Mail is a physical thing. And here we are with the true node in Gemini. And what is Gemini? Gemini is Hermes. Gemini is Mercury. What is the postal service? It's Mercury, right? It's Hermes, the messenger of the gods. So, could the post office be doing double duty moving forward? I would not be surprised. I would not be surprised if the postal service becomes the most important function of the quote unquote federal government. Keep your eye on the postal service, especially the true node in Gemini. I think it's about to be completely remade. And if you've watched Russell J. Gould's videos on this whole thing with the postmaster, you'll understand what I'm talking about. So could they actually even create a new currency that could be run through the postal service? Think about it. Remember now, this true node is going to do what? It starts off here in Gemini, and roughly a little over a year from now, it's going to be moving towards Taurus. And we've already seen this. There's a lot of buzz about the post office. What they're doing. This fucking bullshit with the mailboxes, right? And cutting funds and all those things that theoretically go along with the post office. We're already seeing some of that buzz now, right? That's happening now. Wait till that true node goes into Taurus. And I feel like the post office is going to become something integral moving forward. And again, I would not be surprised if a new currency, which probably won't be connected to paper, I'm just going to be honest with that, probably won't be connected to paper, if that will not somehow also be connected to the post office. Because if they've got the patent on blockchain voting, then they are just 1 or 2 steps away from moving that into a currency space. So wrap your head around that. What's it look like for the rest of the week? Well, we got the moon in Aquarius. So you're going to wake up tomorrow. The moon's going to be in Aquarius. And if you're going to work, it'll be quirky, maybe a little bit more detached than usual. Look out for the high strange. The high strange is sort of in the air with that moon Uranus square going on right now. So tonight, I did this thing to this guy tonight. It wasn't mean, but I did this thing to this guy. So I'm sitting at my computer. I'm looking out my window, and I see this guy parked across the street from my house, right? Parks across the street. I'm sitting there and watching. I'm like, what is that dude doing over there? So I'm watching. So I get up, and I decide that I'm going to go out my back door, and I'm going to go through the side door, and I'm going to go around to the front lawn just to see what's going on. And I look, and it's like, oh, he's not in the car anymore. I said, oh, well, maybe he was parked across the street, and he's going to visit the people across the street. And I was like, okay, well, let me go turn on my sprinkler. And all of a sudden, the guy's at my front door, but he doesn't see me. And so I said, can I help you? And I scared the shit out of him. Oh, he turns around. Anyway, it was, guess where he was from? He was from the census. He wanted to ask me a few questions. And I said, I can't really do that right now. I have some company over. but you can come back later. He said, I can come back another time. Yes, you can come back another time. So I had a visit from Mr. Census Guy tonight, and he didn't see me coming. I didn't know who he was. I didn't know who he was. He was wearing a mask, and it was a very patriotic mask, and he had a little lanyard on. I had to sit there for a moment. I had to say to myself, is this guy a contact tracer? Is he a contact tracer? He's looking mighty official. Yeah, so anyway, I found out who he was, but he didn't see me coming. See, that's a little Gemini thing, right? That's a little Gemini. You don't want them to see you coming, literally and figuratively. We got Neptune right here on the ascendant tonight, and just kind of blending into the background, the atmosphere. It's getting nice and dark, although I am wearing a white shirt. I like the Grand Trine. Play with it. We're in Virgo right now. It looks like that. Where's that Mercury? That Mercury's right out there, 20 degrees. I'm rejoining the gym tomorrow, by the way. On Monday, they're having a sale. I still use my own gym here, Club Hucklebuck, but I'm joining the gym because they have elliptical machines, which I like to use, and it's cheap. They have a sale going on, and it gets me out of my house. That was the one thing about the gym that I loved, besides the machinery. I love getting out of my house, and now I don't go anywhere. Anyway, so I'm joining the gym tomorrow. It's a Virgo thing. You guys should get into the Virgo thing. Self-improvement. It's the rage right now. We have Venus in Cancer, and really, settling into that opposition with Saturn and Pluto. Boy, oh boy, is it settling in. We're going to get into Kyle Rittenhouse, and the Venus was already in that opposition earlier in the week, but it's getting closer and beginning to separate. So that taut sort of that intensity, right? There's a lot of pressure on relationships right now. That's what I think, from outside sources. And it's not even outside sources, it's what people channel. People channel the outside sources. So if you're, and this is what Mickey talked about on Friday, which blew my mind, but didn't really. He was like, let them go. If there are people in your life who are always, choking your Facebook posts or whatever, let them go. Let them go. This is that Saturn-Pluto opposition on Venus right now, because it is the potential for others to channel those institutional forces through them, right? And do you have to stick around? No. Cut the lines. Speaking of cutting the lines, there are rumors that there were some internet cables that were cut by the Soviets. Now, I can't confirm this, but I've heard that this is a rumor. And if it's true, then we're dealing with some oppositions here. Like, look at this now. We have, this is interesting. That is a really interesting opposition. And I could actually see that because Neptune in Pisces is the ocean, right? And Mercury in Virgo, well, certainly Mercury is communication. And what do we have that here? We got a line right there. We got that opposition. And what's happening? We got something cutting right through it, right? Right there. Whap. Venus, Mars, cutting right through that line. I could buy into that because there's been a lot of internet outages over the last 48 hours. And even last week, we had weird internet outages going on. Now, I'm not saying it's happened. There's speculation. But if we're looking at an astrological example for that, there you go. Neptune-Mercury opposition. Snip, right there. So you get to be constructive this week. You get to be Virgoan. You get to look for solutions in your life. Get organized. That's what I'm working on. I'm working on getting organized. When you get organized, guess what? You feel really good. At least that's what I keep telling myself. All right. I think that's what we're looking at for the week ahead. Get organized. Do some legwork. Get healthy. Stay healthy. Right. As Mercury begins to separate from Neptune, guess what happens? You're going to get clearer. There's going to be less confusion. There's been a lot of confusion. The last few days with Mercury in opposition with Neptune. All right, let me check in with you guys. Let's see where you're at. And then we'll keep on plowing through here. Now I got 136 people left. Oh, 241. All right. Hey, there's Steven. What's going on? CenturyLink was out this morning here in Albuquerque. Yep. The census lady asked me my answer. I told her I'm an Arcturian. She asked me my shirt. Yeah. Well, Steven, I can vouch for that. You are. There you go. Ani says, I tore into a census worker who kept banging on my window. I thought she was a contact tracer. Yeah, I know, right? That's a dangerous line of work right now for census takers. When Saturn goes direct, do you think there will be a lockdown? Oh, that's a really good question. I'd say the chances are very, very, very strong. Very strong. I would say very, very strong. Yes. And the reason why there'll be another lockdown is because I think they'll try to unleash something else in November. I think what we'll see is whatever, 2.0 or whatever this thing is in November. And they're going to try to keep people at home. They just don't want people out voting. Let's see. I still don't know what to think about Trump. Is he working with for the? Well, that's it, man. I mean, that's your story with Trump, right? He's a deconstructor. That's what he does. He's a deconstructor, and that's the role he was supposed to play. You never know with Trump. You never know. You just don't know. He's got Neptune square Mercury. He is he's a prevaricator. If you know what that means. He's also somebody who will pump people up. Some people will say and attest to that he's the greatest person they've ever met. And these are people that don't really have any skin in the game. Right? Herschel Walker went on record during the RNC. He played for Trump when Trump owned the New Jersey Generals, the football team, the USFL. And Herschel Walker loves the guy. You'll find people who will swear up and down that he's like just a really good dude, very nice, very kind. And then you'll get other people who will tell you that he's the most narcissistic, egotistical, opportunistic piece of shit in the universe. I mean, that's Trump for you right there. And I don't know. I guess we'll find out if he gets reelected. We'll find out what Donald is really about in Chapter 2, the Trump presidency. And by the way, have you guys seen these the symbols? The symbols for the RNC and the DNC are kind of mind blowing. They're kind of mind blowing, and I think what the Republicans are doing is that they are hijacking the coronavirus. They're totally hijacking the coronavirus. I'll show you why, if you haven't figured it out yet. Let me see if I can find a good copy of it. Yeah, here it is. I'll show you guys. So here's the symbol for the RNC right here. Right there. Here's your symbol for the RNC. See the crown? See the crown behind it? Right. And then we have 5 stars. 5 stars. And then what do we have? We've got 5 points on each star. So we have 25 and 5. And so we got 30, right? Theoretically. Or we have 5, 5, 5, 5, 5, 25. Right? 5, 5, and 5, or we have 25, or we have 25 times 2. So here we go. There's the crown, 2020, Charlotte, bang, right? And then Trump, who's a Leo ascendant, of course, Leo ascendant conjunct Regulus is the king, but it's also the crown. What does that mean? Is it representing the crown? Is it representing the city of London? Or are they hijacking coronavirus? Is this symbol, and they've got a history of apparently hornets and crowns, but I think it's interesting. I think they're basically hijacking the coronavirus by adding the crown into their symbol. I could be absolutely wrong, but that's what it feels like to me. And it's a power move. It's a total power move. Now, the DNC, apparently the DNC is rocking some Baphomet, because the DNC has the old Baphomet horns in there, right? We can look at that. By the way, those two conventions could have been like further apart. They were just worlds apart. It's like if you had to vote for one party that had its shit together, the answer is not that hard. It's not blowing in the wind. Okay, so here we go. If we take the old DNC logo, I'll just put it up there, right? You guys have seen this. You guys are all sharp. You guys are sharpshooters. You're sharpshooters. But I'll put it up there anyway. So here's the DNC logo. See that right there? There's your old Baphomet right there. See the horns right there? Horn coming down. They just flipped it that way. Yep, see that? If I turn it around, you'd see it. Just rearrange the space in your head. I'm sure if I scrolled around long enough, I'd probably find it. But I mean, there couldn't have been two more vastly different DNC logo 2020. Two vastly different presentations of conventions. My God, you look at one, and it's like they're running a Zoom channel as a government. Not that I'm a huge, government person, but I mean, one just looked a hell of a lot more professional than the other. All right, here's the pentagram stuff. Right there, you see that? There it is. There's your bathymetrics right there. Boom. Right there. So you got the crown and you got the Baphomet. Crown versus the Baphomet. Coming up. You know what I noticed though too about the Republicans is that I'd say by and large, and I'm not making a stump to be a Republican, okay? But by and large, I would say the Republicans are positive people. They're like positive people. Like they believe in a dream. They believe in all these wonderful things, and they're just positive. They're positive people. And the Democrats are cynical and bitter and negative. I hate to say it, but it's kind of true. And if you're somebody who is into positivity or you're attracted to that, by the way, that's all Trump. That's all Trump. That's like Trump's training with Norman Vincent Peale and the power of positive thinking. That's all trickled down. That's all trickled down. They are positive people. So if you relate to positivity, positive outcome, then that's a party that you're into, because that'll speak to you. It speaks about hope. It speaks about promise. Now you have to figure out whether that's bullshit or not, because a lot of it tends to be. I would say a lot of it. I'd say on a personal level, those people believe it. I would say on an administrative level, a lot of it's bullshit. But on a personal level, there are people that believe it. They've crafted their lives around it. So you've got one group that's very positive. You have another group, all they really do is complain and tell you about how rigged things are, how bad things are, and that in order for us to change things, we just got to get elected. And just trust us. It's just kind of like, well, let's just pass Obamacare, and then we'll find out what's in it. I mean, that really doesn't float, right? It really doesn't fly. So, if I was somebody who's into positivity, I mean, I'd be attracted to one presentation. If I didn't know any different, if I couldn't read between the lines, if I couldn't get into the seamy cracks, and find, where the weeds are, then that would be very, very appealing to me. And by the way, people that are in business tend to be positive people. Like, you cannot be negative and be in business. You cannot be negative and be in business. It's a mindset that doesn't work. It just doesn't work. Business promotes positivity. right? Let's get it done. Let's make it happen. It's a big, rah, rah, rah kind of deal. People that are, that are into business or are positive usually get things done. They believe in what they're doing, right? They believe in it. Cynical people don't do well in business. They just don't, unless they're completely manipulative and they're Edward Bernays, in which case it's perfect for them. All right, there we go. I think they're going to try and have another little lockdown situation, and I think it'll have to do with whatever they theoretically release. And a lot of people are going to get flu shots now. Now, remember this: a lot of people are getting flu shots. They're telling your kids, "Oh, you got to get a flu shot to go back to school. You got to get a flu shot to go to university. You got to get a flu shot to work at the university." Well, what do you think those flu shots have in them? You think those flu shots have? They're just like vitamin B12 and maybe some MSM or whatever they're going to help you out with some monolaurin. Nah, that's not the case. How many people get flu shots and they get sick as a fucking dog? A lot. So they're setting everybody up now to get these flu shots, to go back to school, to be in the school system, to go back to work, and then guess what's going to happen? You're going to get sick. And guess what's going to happen? You're going to test positive for one of the 9,000 strains of coronavirus. That's what's going to happen. That's how we'll pull this thing off. It doesn't take a rocket scientist. All right. Let's look at this chart. This is before I do this, I'm going to show you a picture of Kyle Rittenhouse. Show you a picture of what he looks like. Yeah, Kyle Rittenhouse is only 5'4". This is quite interesting. Speaking of crown. Yeah. All right, let me find this picture of Kyle Rittenhouse. And he is Kyle Rittenhouse is a throwback. He is a throwback kid. And I'll show you why. He reminds me of a kid from the 1950s. Now, I don't know if that's intentional or not. And I've always said that the Pluto and Sag kids, the Zoomer kids, were going to be more conservative than their millennial counterparts. Although some will be more extreme and perhaps not. Now, he's part of a different group. He's part of a group that was born later. So he is not sort of the first version of the Gen Z kids. And those kids have Pluto and Sag, Uranus and Aquarius, Neptune and Capricorn, and then Neptune in Aquarius. So they're a bit more radical, okay? They're a bit more radical. And then the younger Gen Z kids, which are going to be Kyle's age, theoretically, they're born with Pluto and Sag, Neptune in Aquarius, and Uranus and Pisces. So they're different. They're different than sort of that first group. Let me show you this picture of Kyle Rittenhouse. So it's an interesting picture. So there he is. He's like, he supports the blue. He's really there's some rumor that he might actually be the son of a Leo, meaning a law enforcement officer. So, I mean, to me, this is kind of like, the modern day version of the Eagle Scouts. I mean, he's very proud. I mean, Kyle Rittenhouse is a nerd. He's a total nerd. But he's a nerd with some skills, apparently. Like, you look at this picture here. God, is that even him? Is that even him? This is a very interesting picture. Let me blow this up. me see this. I haven't looked at this shot before. Let's see what we got here. I hope it's up to it. Here we go. Let me see if I can square this thing up here. I just want to get a piece. I just want that picture. The Wall Street Journal, man. They make it hell to read their stuff. I just want to see that picture. Let me get back. Because that almost looks like somebody older. I'm just taking a gander at this thing. Let me see if I can find it again. Now I've lost the. Give me 1 second. Let me come back here. I'm going to try and find that Kyle Rittenhouse picture again. Astro reading with Jim Lewis. Now I'm listening to myself, which I don't want to do. Hold on, let me get that picture back up here, because that was kind of interesting. That was kind of interesting. I'd like to see that thing blown up. That guy's got some skills. That guy knows what to do. Whoever that guy was, if that's Kyle Rittenhouse. Let's just see this here. You guys, he's facing 170 years, by the way. See if I can find that photo. It's Wall Street Journal. See if I can get another look at that photo. The sun. Let's just see this. This is a pretty good shot. Let's see if this is him. Yeah, I think it's him. Yeah, I think it's him. Yeah, it looks like him. The other one looked a little bit different, but he's a total nerd. I mean, here he is again. Right. This is probably at about 14 years old. And, you know, the Midwest shoots guns. Shoots guns. He's got his AR. He's a total nerd. He's a nerd kid. Here he is again. A little pudgy. So I do think this is him after looking at it the second time. But, you know, those are some skills. Yeah, that's him. That's him. Here he is. He's cleaning. This is the weird thing about this event, right? Everybody's just cleaning the graffiti, but he's the one that's looking at the camera. You know, again, I'm not cynical. I'm not cynical, but I do try to, you know, look behind the scenes a little bit. There, the kid. I mean, this is a kid who, you know, he's like in that movie Stand By Me. Okay, this is your kid that essentially sent three guys to two guys to the morgue and one guy to the hospital. There he is. I just wanted to give you a visual. He's a throwback. This kid is a throwback. He's from another time. See? We back the blue. This is some God and apple pie and America stuff right here. And I do think there's part of the Gen Z group that does have those sentiments. Yeah, that's him. There he is. Okay. Look at this. This is this guy's dude, he's just drop kicking him. Look at that. That's a total drop kick right there. Look at that. Now apparently he's at a Trump rally. Supposedly this is him. Supposedly. Well, he can be at a Trump rally. Nothing wrong with that. He can be there. So what? The many faces of Kyle Rittenhouse. He's a nerd. The kid is a nerd. He's a total nerd. He's a law enforcement nerd. He's a throwback. Now, apparently, Brian Urlacher is catching some shit. Right? Duty, honor, courage. There he is. It's his buddy, Blue Lives Matter. That gives you an idea of Kyle Rittenhouse, okay? So I'm going to show you his chart. Let's do his chart. Now, like I said, I threw some spaghetti at the wall, and I rectified his chart. And just based on what I saw of him physically. So I have him as a Cancer rising at about 28 degrees. Because, I mean, if what we saw was real, the kid actually does have a lot of heart with Leo in the first house. That midheaven, I've got Aries on the midheaven. And of course, we had Mars pretty much front and center during that event for all the world to see on his midheaven. And Saturn right here in Gemini. And we see the true node conjuncting Saturn. So, he's got to deal with the law now. He's got to deal with the forces of the law, which is Saturn. Remember, Saturn administrates the law. Sagittarius creates the law. Saturn administers the law. I think this is actually going to go okay for him because he's got his true node. And guess what? Gemini, South Node in Sag. So this is all going to balance out, I think, for Kyle Rittenhouse. And here we have Pluto, Saturn on his moon, right? And this is interesting because if he is a Cancer rising, and he's got that kind of round, sort of doughy Cancer rising, and Cancer rising tends to be conservative, and it's one of those signs that tends to be a bit more connected to this idea of the United States, obviously being a Cancer country. And then here we go, part of fortune, that would be conjunct the United States sun, right there, okay? And then the whole law enforcement thing, midheaven, Aries. So I'd be okay with this time, give or take maybe 45 minutes or so. I mean, he could be a completely different rising sign, but for the sake of just spaghetti at the wall rectification, let's just go with this. Now, he's dealing with Saturn on his moon, and Pluto is there as well. Now, again, he's born on a new moon, Capricorn. So theoretically, this is a very responsible young guy. Very responsible. Capricorns tend to be responsible, and they grow up faster than other signs, which I've talked about, especially with that new moon. Now, I'm gonna go through this, and I'm going to show you another chart, okay, which will actually reinforce my point. So here we have currently the moon is transiting across Mercury in his chart, so there's a lot of emotion that is kind of moving into Kyle's. Well, it's just on the other side. It has been the last couple of days. So what do we have with the moon in Capricorn? Well, we have it's not sentimental at all. It's cool. It's at times calculating, quite austere. And so people are looking at what happened, perhaps from a more detached perspective, one would think. But sometimes with the moon, it can be quite emotional as well, even if it is in Capricorn. So we have Neptune in Pisces, and I'm going to get into what's going on with Neptune in his chart. And this is actually something that all these early Zoomers are going through. And I'm going to show you what the textbook definition of this is. And what he's working out isn't something that's just personal, it's transpersonal. That he became a transpersonal conduit for his generation. And I'm going to show you how and why. Okay. All right. Now, Mars obviously has been kind of a big factor for everybody. But at the time that this shooting went down in Kenosha on Tuesday night, early Wednesday morning, Mars was definitely in square with his moon. It still is now, and definitely square with his Mercury. So that's conflict. That's serious conflict. So what I want to do is, and he's got a Venus-Mars conjunction in Scorpio. That Venus-Mars conjunction can be very charismatic. And he's got that Mars square to Jupiter in his chart, which can be very much like a call to action. I think the kid is kind of fearless. I think he's kind of fearless. And you'll see that with Mars Jupiter squares. Sometimes fearlessness can be foolishness, but I'm not sure in this case, especially when Neptune is trining Mars. It's almost like that kind of that higher order, right, or that higher energy is coming through and really aligning with Mars and with Venus to a certain extent, right? So this feels in some ways like a bit of a guided moment. If this thing is real, right, the way it got played out, and it's not some kind of weird operation or false flag, which it could be. Remember, we're dealing with Gemini. But I would say that what we're seeing, and I could certainly make a case, and I did this the other day, that there was something sort of, and I'm not saying that this kid is like a white knight or anything, trust me. But sometimes when your number is up, your number is up. And I said this on the show the other day, that whatever brought those people to that situation in that moment, it was all based on a series of life choices. That's really how life unfolds. Your life choices, or the choices you don't make, are the things that align you with your destiny. So all four of those people made life choices that brought them to that moment. Okay, whether or not Kyle Rittenhouse was played, whether he was a patsy, those life choices brought them there in that moment. It's exactly what happened. By the way, I don't think he killed the first guy. I think somebody else killed that first guy, because he was running down the street saying, "I didn't kill him. I didn't kill him." So with that said, and Neptune is trining as Mars, and Mars, we know, is what? A planet that is connected to violence. And he's got it in Scorpio, right? And he's got Venus conjunct Mars. So he has a relationship with Scorpio. He has a relationship with the underworld. So it was that some kind of weirdly, divinely ordained moment where Neptune came in, trined his Mars, trined his Venus, and was Kyle Rittenhouse somehow doing God's work with that Neptune trying to Mars? You say, "Oh, that's blasphemy." No, it's not really blasphemy. It is not blasphemy, because there are larger forces at play in our lives. And if you are fucking up, guess what? You will eventually get theoretically taken out. And the only way that really, really doesn't happen, is if you're dealing with the super, super high forces of darkness who have insulated themselves and are probably rotting from the inside out. And when they get out of here, they're going to hell anyways, right? And maybe their role is to just, help us wake up. Maybe that's really what it's all about. But generally, people who are not insulated in that way, and you continue to live your life outside of right livelihood, guess what will happen? It'll catch up to you. It'll catch up to you. It without fail. Okay, so he's got a lot of Capricorn. He's got a Chiron Sun conjunction. He could play the role of a martyr here with a Chiron Sun conjunction in Capricorn, right? It could easily happen. Or he could play the role of a redeemed martyr in some ways. So this is going to be very interesting to watch and really interesting to play out. I think ultimately what will happen is that this thing will get balanced out. If he does any time, he'll probably be a suspended sentence or a minor for carrying a weapon at an age that he wasn't supposed to be carrying that weapon. Now, some people say, well, he's not from Wisconsin. He lives like 15, 20 miles away. And you could make a case that nobody really from that event was from Wisconsin. I mean, I'm sure some people were, but they bust people in, and they were bussed in. So it'll be interesting to see how this thing plays out. Now, okay, I'm going to show you what was going on that night astrologically, but I'm going to show you something else before I do that. I'm going to show you somebody who shares Kyle Rittenhouse's chart. Okay. Here we go. They are what we call time twins in astrology. That's Kyle Rittenhouse's time twin, Greta Thunberg. She's born on the same day, the same year as Kyle Rittenhouse. Same day, same year as Kyle Rittenhouse. And has she not been iconic, right? Has she not been kind of thrown into the limelight? Has she not grown up fast? Damn right she's grown up fast. Whether you like her or not, she's grown up fast. She's found out about adults. She's found out about how adults, move in the world. She's found out about power. She's found out about politics. But we also saw the downside. You can see that with that Sun Chiron conjunction. And when she was asked to give a speech before, what was it, the UN or something like that, it was just all, it was embarrassing. It was like marbles. And, so, well, let some of the other kids talk. That's the Sun Chiron conjunction. But she has the same Venus Mars conjunction as Kyle Rittenhouse. Same. And again, you can see in her chart, I mean, whether she's on the spectrum or not, and some people doubt she's on the spectrum, I'm not going to sit here and question that. But again, there's kind of a fearlessness with Greta Thunberg, even though she's propped up, right? Even though she's propped up. And I don't know exactly what her rising sign is. There's probably a chart on her now. But there's your time twin for Kyle Rittenhouse, Greta Thunberg. Same day, same year. And probably now just as controversial in some ways. Isn't that a trip? Did you see that coming? Did you see that coming? Yep. They even look a little alike. How dare you? Yep. Was Kyle Rittenhouse so bad for self-defense? Look, you're not going to get any argument around me for Kyle Rittenhouse. All right. I mean, it kind of lines up and checks all the right boxes. The only thing I am concerned about is whatever's going on behind the scenes. If there's something going on behind the scenes, then I'm a little concerned. Was he a patsy? Was he set up? That remains to be seen. Yeah. Greta Thunberg. Yep. They even look a little alike. There you go. There you go. Apparently, skateboards have been used by Antifa and BLM as a lethal weapon. Yeah, they are. Absolutely. Absolutely. Don't come to a gunfight with a skateboard. That is so damn funny. Really. Yeah, he turned himself in. Absolutely. Kyle would see himself right even if it hurts himself. Yeah, maybe. This is going to be interesting how this thing plays out. But they were born in different countries. Yes, they were. And so the charts, no, they're not the same, but they're born on the same day. They're probably have different rising signs. They're born on the same day, though. And that's called being time twins. There's somebody born on your birthday who is your time twin. Let's see if we got a chart for Greta. Because sometimes the birth times catch up with these people after a while. Let's do this. Let's check this out. Let's see if we have Astro theme. Sometimes Astro theme we get the time. A little bit after the fact, though. Yeah, they're not giving up Greta's birth time. They're not giving it up. I was just checking in with that. So what's also interesting, this is really weird too. Let me show you this. I just found this out. All right. So there's a book by this guy named Thomas Pynchon. And he's got a character in Gravity's Rainbow called the Kenosha Kid, which is what they're calling Kyle Rittenhouse, the Kenosha Kid. So I can find it. They don't really talk about it in the notes to the Pynchon Wiki. Gravity's Rainbow. Oh, this is interesting. All right, I'm going to play this out. This is really a trip. Check this out. This is a trip. Let's see. All right, check this out. So these are all the footnotes for Gravity's Rainbow. You know, this is what shows up. It's considered to be one of the most dense works of modern fiction. People do PhD dissertations on Gravity's Rainbow. Just ask Steve Crimmy about it. So here's what pops out, right? The Kenosha Kid. Western Rangers, the Kenosha Kid. This guy's wearing a bandana. A Dave Chisholm story, Eli Coulter. So here's what it says. Kenosha is a city, some 85,000 people in the extreme southeast of Wisconsin, about halfway between Chicago and Milwaukee, in the seat of Kenosha County. It is also the birthplace of filmmaker Orson Welles. Kenosha Kid, sodium amytal hallucination of Slothrops while being probed at Pisces about American racial problems. So apparently that shows up on pages 61 to 79, 71, 60 to 71, 114, 696 to 97. So let me read that to you again. Kenosha Kid, sodium amytal hallucination. Now, who has a sodium amytal hallucination? Isn't that Philip K. Dick? Doesn't Dick have that hallucination as well? Sodium amytal hallucination of Slothrops. So the Kenosha Kid is a hallucination of Slothrop while being probed at Pisces about American racial problems. Now, did we just stumble into a WTF moment right there? So here's Thomas Pynchon writing about the Kenosha Kid. We're dealing with Pisces. And I'll show you the Pisces issue we're dealing with. It's not just Neptune and Pisces, although that's an issue, especially with the opposition to Mercury. You know, we're dealing with Pisces as a factor in this Thomas Pynchon novel. Pretty wild, huh? So these are all the characters and footnotes for Gravity's Rainbow. And the Kenosha Kid has a role there. And this was written quite a while ago. That's the interesting thing about fiction. It becomes kind of like a metafiction and a portal. And I think we might have just stepped into one here with Kyle Rittenhouse. What year was the book written? A long time ago. So let's get a sight on it. So Gravity's Rainbow. It's one of the hardest books you'll ever read, by the way. There are people that start Gravity's Rainbow and they put it down. It's if you have read Joyce, it's quite Joycean in its fiction. It was written in 1973, and the narrative is set primarily in Europe at the end of World War II and centers around the design and production and dispatch of V-2 rockets by the German military. But it's anything but a linear narrative. Anything but. So the main character is named Tyrone Slothrop. And so he has the hallucination of the Kenosha Kid. How about that? Pretty wild. You got Tyrone Slothrop, Pirate Prentice, Pig Bodine, Roger Mexico, Teddy Bloat, Kevin Spectro, novel, satire, science fiction, historical fiction, postmodern literature. The theme of paranoia is juxtaposed to a parallel theme of entropy. Gravity's Rainbow is a dark, difficult work of art that is an insightful classic. There you go. So it seems as though Kyle Rittenhouse has fallen through the cracks into Thomas Pynchon's world of metafiction. Okay. Pynchon had Professor Irwin Corey pick up the National Book Award. Great speech, if you can find it. Yeah, you can break it down, Steve. So there's your Kenosha Kid aspect. Now, what's going on with these Zoomers? What is happening with them? Well, they're going through a collective crisis. And I'll show you. So I'm going to give you the textbook translation of their collective crisis from Astro.com. I'll just read it to you because I think it sums it up really, really well. This is and this really, I think, just drops right into Kyle Rittenhouse's sort of meta narrative. Here we go. Come on. Come on, you can do it. Okay, give me 1 second here. Pull this thing up. I just had it out there. 1 sec. It's right here. Here we go. Pain in the ass, Mr. Grinch. Oh, it's coming. All right, so it's not playing nice with that. So I'm going to change the source, and I'll still get to the where we need to go. Where we get the spinning rainbow wheel of death. Okay. So I'm going to go here. Let's do that. And let's do that. Oh, that's me. You don't want to see me. You want to see Kyle Rittenhouse. You want to see his short report, which we'll do. Well, you can read mine. I don't care. All right. So this is a generational aspect, and it's called destructive impulses. Now, remember, we're talking outer planets. Now, the outer planets as they relate to the individual and how they are being worked out. Okay, here we go. So this has been happening for a lot of these Zoomer kids, and unfortunately, a lot of them are, home from school, and they're just, they're having a rough time. It really started right after this lockdown. Okay, so actually, it was going back to last year. All right, here we go. During this time, you are changing inwardly very much, which will be reflected in your changing values. Matters that were once important to you are not any longer. But during this process, you may have to deal with considerable tension because you will feel pressures and compulsions surging inside of you. inside of you that you have never felt before, which is rather disconcerting. You will find these new desires particularly upsetting if you have always stood in the background and let others get their own way at your expense, denying your own impulses. These changes might be a simple desire for more control over your life, eliminating elements that have bothered you. Or you could have a strong desire to destroy everything that has ever frustrated you or stood in your way. Most people will not react to this influence by acting destructively, but you are likely to feel some destructive impulses. These are the results of frustrated drives within you that have never been expressed adequately. It is especially important now that you get in touch with these internal compulsions. Therefore, this is an excellent time to consider psychotherapy. Your repressed energies can be used positively to do a lot of creative work within your own psyche. They can also be very destructive if you either try to suppress them or spread them further, or simply allow them to explode. These energies may be negatively expressed or as destructive or undermining actions, either by you alone or with other people. Even if you have no conscious awareness of these energies, you're unconsciously programming your environment so that events work out in a negative way. So let's just stop there for a second. Let's say that Kyle Rittenhouse is working this out, both personally and collectively, because the outer planets are collective. Like, it's hitting a certain generation that has Pluto and Sagittarius and Neptune squaring their Pluto. That's what's happening. So these are collective energies that are hitting a certain group at a certain time. And there would be individuals in that group that would work those energies out, and that they would play a collective role, that they would become the personification of these energies. Okay, let's keep going. And did he? So as a result of that, did he actually, because of these collective energies, because of these outer planets, right? These transpersonal sort of currents running through his life, through the life of his generation, and in general now. Did he create his own reality based on this? Did those events become assembled? Because that's what this is saying. And I think Liz Green wrote this. I think this is what Liz Green is saying. I'll read it again. These energies may be negatively expressed as destructive or undermining actions, either by you alone or with other people. Even if you have no conscious awareness of these energies, you are unconsciously programming your environment so that events work out in a negative way. If you find that people are working powerfully behind the scenes to do you damage, it is probably an inevitable reflection of the negative energy within you. Often you acquire enemies who try to harm you secretly because your methods leave them no room to oppose you openly. A secret enemy is often someone whom you have frustrated completely, who feels that he or she has nothing to gain by direct confrontation. This is a reflection of those aspects of yourself that you will not confront directly. So the only solution is to confront them. Is this what was happening? And who are the players that were playing a most dangerous game in the collective manifestation of these energies through Kyle Rittenhouse? What was going on with them? And what about, now this is really for kind of this generation of the Pluto and Sag kids, right? You got the older generation with Pluto and Sag, and they could be perhaps a bit of a different degree of Pluto. I mean, let's say their Pluto is at, oh, I don't know, 14 or 13 or even 12. It's still getting into that square. And some of them may be slightly older. You may be looking at somebody who is 18 or 19, perhaps even 20. And in that case, are they kind of on the other side of this thing? Are they going to be on the Antifa side? And there could be some kids who are his age, maybe a little older, 18, 19, and maybe they're doing the Antifa dance or the BLM dance, and maybe they're working out that part of the collective energy, that part of the collective cycle. These are really interesting things to think about. And even if they're not, those kids who were born between 1996 and 2000, they've got Uranus scoring against their Uranus and their Neptune. So they've got some kind of very radical energies going on. So this is a generation right now, both in the early sort of first wave and then the second wave, which is roughly like 2002, 2003 on, right? That's when they have Neptune, Aquarius, and Uranus in Pisces. That's that generation. Anyway, you see how this works? These are collective energies that are being worked out through this event and through Kyle Rittenhouse. And Capricorn will do that sometimes. They'll play those roles, right? Because it's an outer planet, it's an outer sign. It's interesting. And is he doing something not just for, his group, right? Because now we have the South Node in Sagittarius. And Neptune is coming in, and that South Node is going to come into square with Neptune, translating Neptune more and more and more and more. And we're seeing the breakdown of order, really, with the South Node in Sagittarius. Anyway, these are very interesting questions, and one from an astrological perspective that, really, brings up this idea that perhaps people are really chosen. Perhaps the stars are really kind of moving through their lives or life in a collective way or a personal way that the collective works itself out through. And I think that's what we're seeing here. Surely for his generation, because I bet there are kids that are Kyle Rittenhouse's age. I'd love to talk to them. How do they feel about it? How do they feel about what's going on? These are not millennials. Like one of the guys, that Rosenbaum guy, that guy's a millennial. I mean, he's like a very early millennial. He's 36 years old. And, all 5'3" of them are, he's out there, saying, shoot me, Enna, shoot me, Enna, go ahead, Enna, shoot me, right? These are very different energies, very different energies. Okay, let's just look at really quick what happened that night. So I'm going to look at the synastry of that night. It looks like it happened right around, if I remember, about 1 a.m, because I was up watching that live. I knew something was happening that night, so I watched that whole live stream go down that night. Okay, so this is Kyle Rittenhouse on the outside. You'll see, because we know the timing of the event. We don't know his birth time. I'm just speculating that he is Cancer rising. Rectification kind of on the run. But we do know the time of the event. So I got it around 1 a.m. and this is what was happening. So we were putting right here Gemini on the ascendant, which is interesting at that time. Because again, what's going on? There are a lot of very unusual things with that shooting. Very unusual things. And then you have like the big cops, and then you have Kyle Rittenhouse, the little cop, right? Gemini. Obviously, good and evil, black and white. Although the guys he shot, they weren't, technically speaking, black. And then there's that whole weird thing with Tucker Carlson's editor from the Daily Caller, who's kind of right there. It's very weird, and I don't think Tucker Carlson has anything to do with this. But and he had talked to him earlier in the day. I mean, there's just some weird Gemini stuff going on there. And it's all sort of just hidden, kind of right there, but also, on the ascendant. And I think I might be close with his ascendant, really, because if you look at what's happening, I'm not that far off of the time where, it would be either Cancer, early Cancer, or late Cancer rising. I think I'm pretty close on that. I would bet I'm pretty close. Anyway, so here we go. This is what's going on. We have the moon. There's Kyle Rittenhouse's moon, and of course we have Saturn, Pluto, and his moon and his Mercury are, guess what? They're in the 8th house at that moment. So that's the underworld, right? And Mercury is the guide through the underworld. It's the guide through the underworld. You know, he's playing the role of Hermes through the underworld. He is essentially playing the role of initiator through the underworld, right there. See that? Right there. And Neptune is just, you know, kind of right ahead. And remember, you know, these are his planets, right? These are his planets. So he has Neptune in Aquarius. And it's right there, just right there. Bang. Kind of leading the way. So here's his sun, and here's Chiron. We have Jupiter conjuncting his sun, which makes everything bigger, you know, kind of larger than life in some ways now. And here we have Pallas, and it's conjunct his Chiron, and Pallas is about pattern recognition. And there's a lot of pattern recognition going on with these videos and trying to figure out who's who, right? Who's this person? Who's this person? Who's this person? What are they wearing? Where are they showing up? There's a lot going on right now. And there's a lot of kind of YouTube forensics taking place, which is, you know, again, I think quite interesting. And here is his south node. And we had the moon that night in Sagittarius. So here's his south node, right on the moon. And we can see right here the transiting south node is right here as well. And we have his Pluto in Sagittarius. So what do we see here? You know, we're seeing the detriment, right? We're seeing his own detriment, and the moon, which lends itself to a lot of, you know, hyperbole and speculation. And Sagittarius is one of those signs where, you know, there's a lot of like heavy baggage with Sagittarius, and the heavy baggage could be anything from being kind of overzealous and strident, and you know, Sag is a sign that's connected to bigotry and racism as well. And so we're seeing the moon, right, sort of cast its illumination, and it's not quite new, but it's not quite full. We're almost doing with almost a quarter moon phase, and it's right on this south node. And so we also get a lot of like illusion, right? Oh, this he's a white supremacist, right? I mean, this is exactly what we heard very early on, and it doesn't have a lot to do with actual facts. It has more to do with emotion, right? And so this is the light. This is that Sagittarian light. This is the judgment, and there's no sign that is more connected to judgment than Sagittarius. And so this is the judgment that's being passed right here, and it's right on his own south node. And here we have the vertex of the chart, and Mars is right on the vertex at that moment. Bang! It is bang on the vertex. It's significant. Again, I think he plays the role of an usher. He plays the role of an usher, and he's escorting these guys right into the 8th house, right? And Mars being the ruler of the 8th house, or Scorpio and Mars being the ruler of the 8th house. Very powerful. Now, we also have Saturn here. That's his Saturn, right? His Saturn, we saw this earlier. And his Saturn is very close to the ascendant in this moment. Very, very close to the ascendant. And, you know, maybe taking responsibility for the moment. Now, one could make a case that maybe there could be something going on behind the scenes here. If we're just looking at sort of, mundane Saturn, but it's not. It's his Saturn, personal. And then we have Black Moon Lilith right here on the outside of that. This is his chart. He has Black Moon Lilith in Aries. And of course, here's Mars and Black Moon Lilith return. And so the dark shadow, the dark shadow of Aries, and then Eris as well at the top of the chart. So, you know, I'm sure we'll get a lot of kind of projection around the personification of all those Aryan kinds of tropes and memes. So they'll be out there. I'm sure they'll be out there. Anyway, it's a very interesting chart. The thing that really strikes me is his Mercury right here in the 8th house in that moment. It's like going through, it's like it's headed, this is a passage. This is a passage through the underworld, right? This is what he is doing. And Neptune right here. Remember we talked about Neptune before, where it was actually trining his Venus Mars, which is right there, right? And there's that Neptune Venus Mars trine. Then we have Neptune out in front of Mercury, Moon, right through the underworld. Interesting chart. Very interesting chart. you know, I don't like to use the word fated, but I'll say fated on this. That this was kind of a moment of destiny. And if you go back and you look at that Neptune Pluto square that's going on, it's being worked out through him. Like he is a collective portal through whatever aspect his generation, both either positively or negative. It doesn't really matter, or what doesn't matter what side it's on. Like it's frustration, it's righting wrongs, and he became a cipher for that, an absolute cipher. Okay, let's see what you got to say. I'm getting ready to get out of here for the night. Can't vote, but can kill. Yeah, well, yeah. That's what they did with kids of Vietnam, right? You couldn't drink, but you could kill. My father enlisted in the army. He was 16 years old. So let's see. Anything else there? He's going to have Billy the Kid, but nice vibe. We'll see what happens. We shall see what happens. See many moving parts. Kyle had the perfect doom of destiny. Doom run of destiny. Yeah, I know, right? It's all happening. It's all happening right there. Mars is war. Mars is war. You know, and that's where I'll tell you what happened. The night after, boy, there were a lot of troops on the streets of Kenosha. Fucking lickety split, right? Oh, they got there real fast. You know, that shit doesn't happen if the mayor's been MIA. You got Tony Evers, you know, one of these chicken liver, chicken shit governors. That's all that retreat in Capricorn. And so now you got a Capricorn kid showing up and filling the void. There you go. All right. Thank you, everybody. I appreciate you being here tonight. Now, remember, I am, you know, I'm a millennial. I've always had a hard time connecting with the Gen Z. They feel super judged. I always thought it was just teenage. No, man, those Gen Z kids, man. You're gonna millennials. You're gonna have a rough time with these Gen Z kids. I'm telling you. They have these millennial teachers. They like complain openly about these Gen Z kids. They cannot handle them. They are not manageable. They're just not manageable. You just got to, you know, millennials. You just got to wait for these poor little Pluto and Capricorn kids who are being raised in cellophane and face diapers now. You got to wait for them to come of age. They'll be your allies. Trust me. You'll be good with them. All right. I'm out of here. Thank you very much. Again, if you want to take my webinar relocation, there's a link in the description for the show. It takes you to my website, which shows you exactly what I'm talking about, what I'm going to cover, and the time, the place. There's a PayPal link. I will send you the link Saturday morning. If you have been subscribing to the show, and I mean subscribe by supporting, you get to attend the webinar, okay? And then all the links for the events will be up tomorrow on my website, on Facebook. If you're the public, you want to come to this cool event, you got 30 days. You can still get good flights. It's going to be super affordable. You're going to have a kick-ass time. I guarantee it. You just ask the people that were there last year. I made sure everybody had a kick-ass time. This year it's going to be even better. It'll be twice as good. Trust me on that. All right? Okay. Use your head in order to discern what's real. Your heart to step what's possible. Thanks for being here. I'm Robert Phoenix. I'll be back tomorrow with 15 minutes of flame. Have yourself a great evening and a great week.